We all use computers all the time, yet do we know what they look like on the inside? Let's take a look at some different computers and get to know them. Most of the computers I'm going to show you won't have any keyboards, displays, or touchscreens connected to them. They'll just be the computer part of the computer. Our first patient is a desktop computer in a tower case or chassis. This computer is from 2008, give or take, and I still get a lot of use out of it. It uses an AMD Phenom 2 processor, which is an AMD 64 architecture chip. Both Intel and AMD branded processors in your desktop and laptop computers are AMD 64 architecture. What does architecture mean? Well, to put it in human terms, you can think of it as language or culture. Software that runs on an AMD 64 chip works, more or less, on all other AMD 64 chips. Try to use it on a different architecture, the chip doesn't understand what the software is saying, asking it, or saying it to do. We can come up with ways to translate or emulate one chip architecture on a different chip. Then there's the operating system, or OS. We'll get to that another time. Let's first take a look around the exterior of the computer. On the front, you'll typically find the power button and perhaps a USB port for plugging in a USB memory stick or other USB contraption. Some computers can read and write optical discs, such as CDs and DVDs, using an optical disk drive. On the back, you'll find a plug for the electricity, of course, more USB ports, PS2 ports for old-timey keyboards and mice, VGA, HDMI, and DVI ports for video displays, audio input and output ports, Ethernet for wired networking, and antennas for wireless networking if your computer supports it. Wireless networking is often called Wi-Fi. Let's take a look inside. If you're going to do this at home, make sure your computer is unplugged and you are grounded. Not in this kind of spiritual way, but make sure you're grounded so that the static electricity doesn't hurt anything. If the computer is plugged in, you can seriously hurt yourself and the computer with an electric shock. You want to make sure you ground yourself by touching something metal that is grounded. You don't want any static electricity to zap your computer dead or to just give you an uncomfortable feeling on the tips of your finger. Look at all those wires. If you follow them, you see that all come from the power supply. The power supply takes an alternating current AC, electrical power from your outlet in your home, and converts it to direct current, DC, electrical power, just like the batteries you put in a flashlight or a TV remote control. The power goes to various points inside the computer to power the cooling fans, the hard disk and optical drive, and the motherboard. The big circuit board that everything is plugged into is the motherboard. And this hunk of metal is the big heatsink for the central processing unit, or CPU. Some of the electricity being used to make your computer work converts to heat, and heat can cause things to melt, burn, or catch fire. If your CPU gets too hot, it can start making errors or get permanently damaged. That's why your smartphones typically shut themselves down when you leave them out in the sun at the beach to avoid permanent damage. The RAM over here is volatile memory, meaning it only remembers things while the computer is on, and the hard drive, or SSD, is non-volatile memory, meaning that the items you store there won't go away when your computer is turned off. In 2020, we typically measure RAM in gigabytes, say 4 to 32 gigabytes, and a hard drive in terabytes, 4 to 10 terabytes. If you're getting a SSD, SSDs might be slightly smaller, but you typically find SSDs are like 512 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. I remember in the year 2000, RAM was measured in hundreds of megabytes, like 256 megabytes, and hard drives were measured in single-digit gigabytes, say 1 to 2 gigabytes. My first laptop computer in 1992 had a whopping 4 megabytes of RAM and 120 megabytes of disk space, and probably cost a whole lot more than the computer you're using right now to listen to this video. Our next patient is a laptop. This is a Lenovo ThinkPad T420. It's from 2007 or 2008. It's the computer I use for all my programming courses. It has an Intel i5 processor, 4 gigabytes of RAM, and 240 gigabytes of SSD storage. Unlike a desktop computer, it's harder to look inside, yet it is still possible. There are points of access on the laptop, so I can replace things like the computer memory and the computer's hard drive, or SSD. The laptop has a VGA port for video, Ethernet for wired networking, a display port, and USB. You can also see the heatsink that's used for keeping this laptop cool. Here's another USB port, a SATA port for external storage, a memory card reader, and an express card slot. Unlike a desktop computer, a laptop has a battery, and mine is replaceable. make sure your computer is turned off if you're going to pop the battery off. Our next patient is a Raspberry Pi Model 3B. I borrowed this one from the computer science department to use at home. This is what's considered a single board computer. It is a system on a chip. Everything that was inside the desktop computer's case is shrunk way down to fit on this single board. You can kind of call this an embedded system. However, it is a pretty sophisticated computer for an embedded system. It has an ARM architecture processor, different than an AMD 64 processor, 1 GB of RAM, and no SSD or disk. Instead, I plugged in this micro SD card. It's the same kind of card you'd use in a camera, portable game console, or smartphone. It is the non-volatile storage for this computer. You'll recognize our last two patients. It's a smartphone and an e-reader. Both of these computers use an ARM processor, so they're ARM architecture, just like the Raspberry Pi. Like the other computers, they each have RAM and non-volatile storage, like a memory card for storing apps, books, pictures, and whatever else you can think of. They don't have as many ports to plug things into like the other computers we've looked at, yet they have really cool built-in displays which are touch sensitive. What all the computers have in common is that they all have a central processing unit that has a dedicated architecture like AMD 64 or ARM. They all have RAM, which is volatile and can only store information while the computer is running. When the computer is turned off, non-volatile storage is used, such as a disk or SSD or a memory card to keep your stuff safe. And they all use electricity to make things happen. If you have questions, please use the comment section below.